when love betrays you. It's not the pain that breaks you. It's the realization you trusted the wrong person. This statement beautifully captures the emotional depth of the situation. Pain is temporary, but betrayal has the power to reshape a person's perception, identity, and emotional strength. In this context, the protagonist is someone who has been trained to withstand extreme circumstances, both physically and mentally. He has likely endured harsh environments, near-death experiences, and moments where everything depended on split-second decisions. Yet, despite all that, the one thing he probably never prepared for was emotional betrayal from someone he loved and trusted the most. This type of pain doesn't come with a warning, nor does it appear like an obvious threat. It creeps in silently, making its impact not through violence, but through disappointment and disbelief. When someone in the military, especially an elite force like Delta Force, faces emotional trauma, their reaction is very different from that of an average person. A regular individual might break down, confront impulsively, or even fall into depression. But someone conditioned within military discipline processes emotions strategically. The heartbreak doesn't shatter them in public, it strengthens them in silence. Trust, for them, is a calculated part of survival, and when that trust is broken, it becomes a lesson rather than weakness. The pain of betrayal awakens a heightened sense of awareness, pushing them not towards emotional collapse, but towards internal clarity. It's not just the betrayal that hurts. It's the realization that the betrayal came from someone who had access to the softest parts of their heart. A Delta Force operative is trained to protect his teammates, complete missions, and survive against external enemies. But here, the enemy wasn't external. It emerged from within his personal life. That's where the depth of the pain lies. He wasn't ambushed on the battlefield. He was emotionally ambushed in the space he believed was safe. This experience instills a feeling of vulnerability that no battlefield ever could. However, the strength of an individual like him is seen in how he responds. Rather than allowing the betrayal to make him lose control, he internalizes the pain and converts it into discipline. Where others would lash out impulsively, he chooses silence, not out of weakness, but out of strategic calculation. His understanding shifts from questioning, "Why did this happen to me?" to, "What does this teach me?" The emotional impact becomes fuel that sharpens his judgment and slows down his reaction, ensuring he doesn't give the betrayer the satisfaction of seeing him broken. Ultimately, this key point emphasizes that emotional betrayal can be more dangerous than physical conflict. A wound may heal, but a broken trust stays as a scar that evolves into wisdom. For someone of his caliber, the betrayal doesn't destroy him, it redefines him. The pain is not a sign of weakness, but a reminder that even the strongest warriors feel deeply, and once that realization settles in, his actions are no longer driven by heartbreak, but by a renewed understanding of strength, one that combines resilience with emotional intelligence. Never underestimate a quiet man. His silence may be the calm before a tactical storm. This key point reflects the inner strength of individuals who don't need to express their power through words or visible aggression. True strength is often silent, controlled, and strategic. The man in this story, having the background of a Delta Force operative, carries an aura of discipline and composure. Unlike someone who reacts impulsively, a trained soldier operates with precision. He doesn't speak much because he doesn't need to. His confidence isn't built on loud threats, but on the certainty of his capabilities. Silence, in his case, is not a lack of reaction. It is an intelligent pause, a moment where he assesses, observes, and decides the most effective course of action. Most people misunderstand silence as weakness or submission. They believe that someone who doesn't argue or respond aggressively must be afraid or powerless. That's where they misjudge a man like him. Silence isn't his surrender, it is his preparation. Just like a storm that builds quietly before unleashing its force, he collects his thoughts, suppresses the surge of emotions, and transforms them into a focused response. For him, speaking early is a mistake, because reacting without full awareness compromises control. Thus, he stays quiet, not because he can't speak, but because speaking is not yet necessary. His silence also comes from experience. He has likely witnessed situations where emotional reactions cost lives. He knows that controlled action is far more powerful than uncontrolled aggression. People who underestimate quiet individuals assume they are passive. They overlook the fact that some of the most dangerous forces move without sound. The cop boyfriend, full of arrogance and physical dominance, perceives him as just another man. His uniform and authority make him believe he is superior, but what he doesn't understand is that the person in front of him has survived far more dangerous confrontations than a domestic dispute. The cop's power lies in his badge, the soldier's power lies in silence, training, and an unshakable mindset. That difference is massive. When a quiet man finally decides to act, the effect is profound. He doesn't waste time on unnecessary conflict. His actions are quick, calculated, and decisive. There is no rage, only focus. Once he commits, there's no turning back because unlike ordinary people, he doesn't operate on ego. He operates on objective. That is what makes his calmness so threatening. The cop may attack with emotional aggression, but when the soldier responds, it will be with absolute precision. That silence was never weakness, it was tactical restraint. Ultimately, this key point teaches a powerful life lesson: loudness is often insecurity disguised as confidence, whereas silence is strength concealed until needed. The quiet man knows his value and doesn't seek validation. He doesn't announce his capabilities. He demonstrates them when necessary. And when that moment comes, it's not noise that makes an impact. It's the silent, calculated force of a storm that no one saw coming. He thought he was the predator because he wore a badge, but he didn't know he just stepped into the battlefield of a trained warrior. This key point encapsulates the powerful clash between perceived authority and actual capability. The cop boyfriend enters the situation believing his profession and position give him superiority. A uniform and badge often create a sense of power, influence, and control in everyday scenarios. People fear law enforcement not only because of physical force, but also due to legal consequences. However, what he fails to realize is that authority doesn't automatically equal dominance, especially when facing someone whose training goes beyond standard enforcement and into elite military conditioning. The cop assumes the situation is simple. He sees a man whose wife has been unfaithful, expects an emotional reaction, perhaps fear or surrender, and thinks he can easily assert control. His mindset is shaped by everyday confrontations where his presence alone can intimidate people. But a Delta Force operative is a different kind of opponent. This man has been trained for the most dangerous operations, often behind enemy lines, in high-stress environments where one mistake can mean death. He doesn't fear confrontation, he calculates it. He doesn't panic, he stabilizes. For someone like him, aggression without strategy is a weakness, and the cop, driven by ego, walks right into a tactical disadvantage without even realizing it. The cop believes he is the hunter, but this encounter flips the roles entirely. On the battlefield, the soldier was trained to read intentions, anticipate moves, and neutralize threats before they escalate. The cop, unaware of his opponent's experience, views the confrontation as personal and lets emotions guide him. The soldier, however, treats it like a mission. He separates emotion from action, allowing his training to take control. In that moment, what seems like a domestic conflict becomes, in his eyes, a threat assessment scenario. His calm demeanor doesn't indicate submission. It's strategic silence before execution. This key point highlights the danger of judging someone based on appearance or circumstance without understanding their background. The cop only sees a husband betrayed, potentially vulnerable. What he fails to see is the warrior underneath, someone who has survived situations far more brutal than a physical scuffle. On the battlefield, the soldier encountered calculated ambushes, tactical warfare, and life-threatening operations. Compared to that, this altercation feels controlled and manageable. The cop's aggression might have worked on an average person, but against someone trained to dismantle threats efficiently, it becomes his downfall. The story emphasizes an essential truth: real power doesn't need to be declared. It is demonstrated when necessary. The soldier doesn't flaunt his abilities, because true warriors don't operate on ego. They operate on discipline and purpose. The cop believed his uniform made him powerful, but uniforms can be removed. Training stays within. When he attacked, he unknowingly activated the soldier's tactical instincts. And once those instincts come alive, the encounter stops being emotional and transforms into a precise operation. In the end, the predator becomes the prey not because he lacked strength, but because he underestimated the quiet resilience and lethal capability of a trained combat professional. Authority intimidated many, but experience empowers the few, and that difference defines the outcome. In war, I fight for survival. At home, I fought for dignity. And that battle was far more personal. This key point reveals the emotional contrast between external conflicts and internal ones. A soldier on the battlefield prepares for danger, but that danger is expected. Every operation comes with calculated risks, and survival depends on strategy, teamwork, and discipline. Physical threats are obvious in war: bullets, explosives, hostile enemies. The soldier enters combat mentally equipped to survive because he knows the stakes and understands that death is a possibility. His training teaches him to detach emotions, focus on the mission, and operate with mental clarity. But home is supposed to be different. Home is meant to be a sanctuary, a place where guards are lowered, where vulnerability is allowed. In war, he wears armor. At home, he takes it off. On the battlefield, survival is the mission. At home, dignity becomes the mission. When a man faces betrayal in his personal life, especially from someone he trusted deeply, the attack is not on his body, but on his identity and self-respect. That kind of wound doesn't bleed externally, it bleeds silently inside. When his wife betrayed him, and her boyfriend, a cop, confronted or attacked him, it wasn't just a physical challenge. It was an assault on his dignity, his role as a husband, and his sense of personal honor. In war, enemies are unknown, distant, and clear targets. At home, the enemy was someone close. The pain from that betrayal strikes deeper than any bullet because it questions the very core of who he is. The emotional battlefield is far more unpredictable than war. There are no standard rules of engagement, no mission commands, no backup team. He stands alone, facing not just another person, but a painful truth about someone he loved. Yet, his response is guided by dignity. A trained warrior does not act recklessly, even when hurt. Fighting for survival in war means eliminating the threat. Fighting for dignity at home means maintaining self-control, not losing himself in anger or revenge. Instead of acting impulsively, he acts with restraint, a distinction that shows real strength. He chooses not to react out of rage, but with precision and self-respect. In that moment, his objective isn't to win a fight, but to prove he cannot be broken, not by force and not by heartbreak. This key point also reflects the maturity of a true warrior. He understands that some battles are not won through power, but through presence. In war, survival may be the ultimate victory, but at home, survival isn't enough. Dignity is. This confrontation becomes an internal test. Will he allow betrayal to destroy his self-worth, or will he hold his ground with honor? Ultimately, The story shows that the hardest battles are not fought with weapons, but with emotions. A soldier survives war by protecting his body. He survives betrayal by protecting his character. And in choosing dignity over aggression, he wins the most meaningful battle, the one within himself. He attacked with anger. I responded with precision. That's the difference between a cop and Delta force. This statement reveals the fundamental contrast between impulsive aggression and calculated control. The cop's attack is driven by emotion, anger, ego, jealousy, and a false sense of dominance. His reaction is loud, forceful, and unmeasured. He believes that physical strength and authority give him power. But power without discipline is fragile. In contrast, a Delta Force operative has been trained to manage crises, not become consumed by them. His response is silent but effective, tactical rather than emotional. When the cop launched his attack, he acted out of rage. His intention was to intimidate, overpower, and prove superiority. However, in emotional confrontation, raw anger leads to poor judgment. Rage blinds a person, reducing their ability to foresee consequences or read the environment. For a soldier, especially one trained in elite operations, there is no benefit in reacting emotionally. Precision requires mental clarity, composure, and an understanding of timing. He doesn't swing wildly. He acts when necessary, with purpose. His response is not about proving himself. It's about neutralizing a threat efficiently. This moment demonstrates that strength doesn't come from aggression. It comes from restraint. Anyone can throw a punch, shout loudly, or react emotionally, but not everyone can stay calm under pressure. The soldier's discipline enables him to wait, observe, and respond only when the time is right. He doesn't need to escalate the situation. He needs to control it. That is what precision looks like. Trained professionals operate with focus, not fury. Their movements are calculated, their energy conserved. In combat, overreacting costs lives. In personal conflict, it costs dignity. The difference between the cop and Delta Force isn't just skill. It's mindset. The cop looks at the situation as a confrontation of pride. The soldier views it as a situation requiring assessment and resolution. His goal is not to win a fight, but to ensure it ends without unnecessary damage. He knows that true power doesn't require spectacle. It is silent, efficient, and often unseen. Precision also reflects confidence. A person who truly understands their strength doesn't need to display it recklessly. The soldier doesn't respond forcefully just to show he can. He waits until he must. When he does act, it's fast, accurate, and complete, leaving no room for further conflict. That single moment reveals the gap between training and instinct. The cop uses his authority as a weapon. The Delta Force operative uses his discipline. Ultimately, this key point teaches that real power lies in control, not chaos. Aggression may make noise, but precision creates impact. Someone driven by anger might strike first, but someone driven by clarity finishes last, and finishes right. In the end, the soldier's response proves that the greatest strength is not in the force of the hit, but in the accuracy of the decision. He doesn't just win the confrontation. He defines it on his terms.